Well, all right. It's March 16th. You've probably already seen 5 Q reports, so I'm not sure what I have to add. Obviously, as a matter of housekeeping, my first foray into online streaming was less than a sterling success. There were pieces of it that were live. I could have perhaps edited some of it, but most of it was just noise. Even when I was supposed to have had the audio, and I think you guys picked it up, it wasn't working. So, and part of my problem is that in order to make it work with my current system, I have to dismantle everything and start all over again and go back to the live streaming and set all my calibrations separately. So I'm probably going to do something different for the live stream, maybe with my cell phone, we'll see. So the Q postings have to do with a variety of things, not, I think probably only a couple of them of great importance. There is the first Q posting is boom, and it has 5 O's in it. Somebody said 5 O's, 5 I's. Does that mean they've knocked out the 5 I's, the New Zealand, Australia, Britain, Canada, and the United States? Does that mean they have dismantled that process and stopped them from cross-relating? Who knows? I have wondered about this whole boom thing. It's all fine and good. It gets everybody all stirred up, but I'm not really sure what it means. And I hate to sound less than stirred up about it, but I'm less than stirred up about it. So there is a posting that I picked up, and I'll go through that in a little bit, which has to do with how they're sneaking money out of one of the thousands of ways they're sneaking money out of the federal government. So the next one has to do with, then there's a boom, 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 which is, which is, just a second, which has to do, one of the booms has 4, one has 2, and one has, 6 or 8 or whatever it has. There was some report on the Council of Foreign Relations says Trump destroyed the crown jewel of global governance. I'll get a chance to talk about that perhaps. And then there is the next posting is Iran next. There's an empty kill box, which means that they're going to do it. The next information is about, I think it's clearly about Rex Tillerson, and there is both his days after, which would be linking all of that Middle East stuff. He made several stops, including to Kenya. There was a comment, no coincidences, which can be read, I think, any one of several ways. In other words, did he conduct a mission? Was the mission completed? There was some indication that in Kenya, the 2 opposing parties came together just within days of that. It says to track it, it's important, and the Muslim Brotherhood, which would indicate that there was stuff going on that had to do with Rex there, perhaps to shut down the Muslim Brotherhood, perhaps not, perhaps he didn't disable it. Obviously, there's some indication from Trump, from the comments that he made after he fired Tillerson, that Rex was not doing the kind of job he wanted to do, and that they were at cross purposes. I think in some sense one has to read that there were cross purposes as to Kenya, the Muslim Brotherhood perhaps, and also to Iran, and that those probably go deeper than just their outward conversations about what isn't working. So the next post has to do with extreme efforts to kill the login devices, to kill the censor, extreme efforts, and then the dead cat bounce, which is a reference, as almost everybody knows, that even a dead cat will bounce if you drop it far enough, and that Q is perhaps saying that these online stuff is just, they're still trying to censor people, they're still trying to make hay out of the process, but they're not being successful. Obviously, some of you thought that we saw that yesterday. Frankly, I think it was probably more my incompetence than anything else. I hate to blame it on somebody else if that's not the case. It would be so fun to say it's everybody else's fault, but in this case, I don't think I can say that. So there was an anon that said that the last of it was enjoy the show, which means that we might actually see something, which would be fabulous for a change. And then bring the rain, and one of the anons pointed out that rain and Iran are the same four letters spelled differently, and that is perhaps plausible. Does the rain also constitute a drip or falling out of all kinds of these organizations that are no longer working? Anybody's guess is as good as mine. 949 is a non-posted something says still trust Sessions or no. Why is Fox saying McCabe will skate? And Q posts the response is trust the plan, full control. In other words, there aren't any problems, and there is no problem with Sessions. Once again, for the 15th time, there's no problem with Sessions. There is an anonymous posting that posts both the heading and cover for the CIA and for the Department of State, which of course is where Pompeo was and will be. There is a comment. Q says, and this guy says, Pompeo's Trump's guy. As head of CIA, he gathered intel on the shady CIA shit we've done both here and overseas, moves to State Department to use that intel to keep the free world from the CIA bullshit. So the response is that from Q, because all of that is an anon, and the response is trust Kansas. And you think, well, what's that all about? So the first thing I did, and one of the things I have to say to you folks is, I don't watch everybody else's stuff, because if I do, it warps my research. So I haven't watched anybody's stuff. I haven't listened to anybody's stuff. I haven't done anything except look at this myself. Some of you will say, well, gee, that's lame. Why didn't you get it at all? Because I want to give you a different perspective. That's the deal. So, and I want to try to make it so that there's actually something fresh coming out of my mouth. So the first thing I looked at with Pompeo was he born in Kansas? Is that the deal? Is he a Kansas native? And if you get on to Wikipedia, you find out that he moved to Wichita after graduating first at West Point, and he and a couple of his graduate friends acquired 3 aircraft parts makers in Wichita, Kansas, and then they did venture building. They named it Thayer Aerospace. They got an investment from Koch Industries, which is the Koch brothers, as well as Dallas-based Cardinal Investment with Bain Capital, and that Pompeo had linkages there. And then they go on to say that, eventually he bought people out and sold it. And that his Bulatao, his buddy, stayed with him and then moved with him as the chief operating officer of the CIA. I think it is fascinating that Pompeo, with that business background and the West Point background, and an obviously brilliant guy, pops right to the top of the CIA. Obviously, he is an impressive and brilliant guy, and if in fact he's a good guy, he will be a great asset. And so he became president of Century International, an oil field equipment company, and that's also a Koch's Industry thing before he went on. The next posting by Q, which is 951, we're getting close here, which is March Madness. Public will show, of course, that matches up with the basketball, the NC2A basketball, and there were a bunch of people that also noted that Kansas is in the hunt for the NC2A, the University of Kansas, which should mean nothing, right? But I had to point it out. And the big one is the last one, which is that Q posts on 952 at 19 first, and I'll talk about that in a second, at number 3 in Killbox first. Most everybody has linked number 3 to Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton has been on the list as number 3 excuse me, for some time. The 19, there's a comment in January that said the 19 would cease to exist immediately upon the harm of selected individuals. Think nuclear standoff clarified. And there are also links to the 19 being in the safe room that were plotting against Trump around the time of the State of the Union message, and it says that they would no longer be with us, they would cease to exist immediately upon harm of selected individuals. So there are a number of links, and I think probably the most prominent connection to the 19 is that these are the insiders that were immediately plotting after Trump about the time of the Nunes release. So the next one is the link, and they show John Perry Barlow, and of course we know that he set up that Dropbox and that it was supposed to be safe, and it was tied to Snowden, and Snowden was tipping people to go in there and to use Tor, when in fact the CIA was probably inside on all of it. And then it has 2, 3, and 4, and the 2, 3, and 4 most people would take to mean Jockstrap McStain, our famous guy from Arizona. Number 3, of course, is Clinton. Number 4 is typically Nancy Pelosi. And so the linkage is they'll take the 19 out, they take out Clinton, if that's in fact what they're doing, or they take out 3 individuals in addition to the 19, and then they get through the Barlow deal and in link with all the stuff that goes in behind on the back door with the MSM, that they pick up McStain and Hillary and Nancy Pelosi, and if in fact that's the case, that's pretty fabulous stuff. It says we have the sub, and you know, people picked up everything from Subway sandwich on out. Sub was Red October, the sub was the Argentinian sub, the sub was an old Hitler sub. The sub is a sub which is dark stuff that was owned by the CIA, and I think that's as likely as any, and that in fact it was the CIA may well have had a submarine that launched the missile, which sounds wild and crazy, but perhaps not. There's a quote here: "There exists a shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself." Senator Dan Inouye, and Daniel Inouye was from Hawaii, which is coincidental, and probably truly coincidental, where even though Q says no coincidences. But there is probably some linkage between the CIA and that Hawaii stuff. I know there's some that said that it was intentional, and that's how they got access into CIA documents or digital stuff. So, and that let's see, probably what else do I have to say about this? Some even said that sub, or Red October, which is Snowden, and that there was a whole bunch of comments about Snowden was either a double asset, or they got access to him, or they brought him together and they're getting information out of him. It's clear from having read the congressional reports that Snowden was not really working at being a whistleblower. Obviously, that's the cover he used, but he not only whistleblew what the NSA was doing, and supposedly that's a good thing, but of course it gave the CIA a one-up on the NSA. But in addition to that, he raided many times the stuff that would have shown simply that the public was being spied upon and how, and that he either double agent used it or he's held it. There was some conversation that there are a couple people that actually have that information. There's also hints that perhaps Assange has that stuff. I'm not sure that that's the case. There were comments that link to that whole sub-business and the CIA about Pompeo probably not in full control of the CIA. And I want to remind you that when we go back to Dulles, Allen Dulles, who was bounced out of the CIA by JFK in, 61 or 62, he continued effectively to run the CIA or to run rogue operations within the CIA, and obviously did so in Vietnam when he was named cabinet, or named representative to Vietnam. Now, why Kennedy put him in as the ambassador to Vietnam, I have no idea, unless it was just to placate him, but it obviously didn't placate him. It loaded him to do double dog dirty stuff to Kennedy, because he both took out the Diem administration in Vietnam, and he also helped orchestrate the assassination, as I believe it, and the CIA was right in the middle of it, including our favorite guy, H.W. Poppy, let me run the drug fields, Bush. So there is some consensus that taking a trusted person in Pompeo and moving him from the CIA, where he has figured out what's going on, and using what he's figured out to go after, to get it within it, and to double up on the Secretary of State's office to try to close in on the rest of it. So that's all possible. Let me do as a separate one the report that has to do with how the government is how individuals, left-wing individuals, are stealing money out of the government as part of a Government Accountability Institute report. I'll do that later. I'll try to keep this short. You know, I am doubly humbled by not doing very well with my streaming, and also that there were so many of you that were very positive and supportive and engaged and participated. I was also intrigued by the fact that you engaged each other, and did so several times, which was really playful and fun. And I'll get it put together and we'll get on with it. We really need to still positively do stuff other than simply read this Q stuff and play with it. And so, I'm working on it, and I will encourage you to engage me with it as well as we get farther along. Thank you so much. Thumbs up if you are so inclined. Subscribe if you haven't, and thank you for revisiting me even through the dark space. And hang in there. We're making progress. The Q seems to be making progress, and probably one of the most beautiful things about it is, look, it's either going to happen in March. We're going to see it within the next 60 days. We certainly are going to see it before the primary, or it's all bogus stuff. So For those of us who retain some skepticism, the most hopeful part about it is that this is not something that's going to be dragged on for 2 years. It's either going to happen shortly or it's not going to happen at all, and we are in support of everything that's going on and everything that's allegedly going on and everything we hope that's going on. And there may be much more to it than even we know. So the Q keeps telling us that. Thanks so much.